So when it comes to my channel, through Jermaine's Lens, I often of course focus on the camera performance of a phone, and I try to travel and of course showcase how a phone performs in terms of camera. And one of the latest ones is of course my Sony Xperia 1 Mark V that Sony sent to me, but they didn't pay me for it of course. But they sent it to me to test it out and showcase how it performs. Now, I really like what this camera is capable of on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, but it doesn't come without critiques. And I do have some when it comes to the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. So, let's dive into my critiques for the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V and hope to see improvements on the next generation or probably on a Pro Mark II. Now to begin with, again, I really want to praise one thing when it comes to the Sony series, especially when it comes to a phone. It really understands on how to be a handheld camera, a camera in a phone shape compared to a lot of other phones out there. The possibility to be really creative and the possibility to of course dive into the settings itself is something that Sony excels at, where others try to somewhat replicate it but are making it a bit more basic. For instance, you have 4K 120 frames per second, which out of my head only the OnePlus 10 Pro has. Not the OnePlus 11, no, the OnePlus 10 Pro. So that's something that already is really nice to see on a phone like this. The possibility to mess around with those frames and of course slow down the footage later on is definitely a benefit. But when it comes to the camera setup itself, the one lens that I really like is of course the main sensor. That's the one where it excels and the details are really good at it. Playing around with it and editing afterwards, because I kind of want to do that and learn more about editing my shots, definitely is something that I enjoy when it comes to this Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. But as stated, I do have my critiques, and the main one would go out for the periscope. I really like the philosophy of the periscope. Don't get me wrong, the possibility to switch between two different focal lengths is amazing because the lenses inside this move to allow you to have different focal lengths. And therefore, in theory, you should get better results. But when it comes to results, that's where it kind of fluctuates. When I went to Dinant in Belgium, I definitely noticed that while the camera, when it comes to the main sensor, it delivered amazing shots with great details, great contrast. It's the periscope that kind of let it down. Especially when it comes to daytime, you wouldn't expect any noise to be in the shots. But when it comes to the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, it did. And that's kind of weird for me. So that's one thing where I definitely would critique the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. That possibility of it is really nice, and I think the idea behind the periscope is amazing. But they need to work on that. And then you think, okay, but what are the other critiques when it comes to the phone? Well, honestly, realistically, there aren't many. You get the 3.5mm headphone jack, better for audio recording as well, not only for music, because the 3.5mm headphone jack delivers better audio than Bluetooth. It's just a fact. Then recording audio is definitely better than Bluetooth. Again, just a fact. And of course you get micro SD support. You don't need any tools, you can just remove it as well. It's really simple and intuitive. Want to use it again as a camera, there's a shutter button. When you press it slightly, it will have a focus point, and when you hold it in, it takes the shot. Also, it starts the camera up itself, which I just done and didn't mean to, but there you go. But when it comes to that, I feel like it does really well. But there are a little bit of software gripes that I have with it, especially for a phone that again is centered around camera performance as well. Where is my separate gallery app? And I know a lot of people will probably not feel the same when it comes to the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V and any other phone that doesn't have their own gallery app. But I really don't like Google Photos. It feels very cluttered compared to a lot of other gallery apps that I've used. And a gallery app that is so cluttered, I really don't like. It makes it messy. It makes it hard to track the pictures. Well, harder to track the pictures that I've taken. I don't care about pictures that I've taken on any other device. I don't care about highlights and moments and all that stuff. I just want to see in the gallery what I've taken with the phone that I'm using. Nothing else. I don't care about the rest. I really don't. And therefore I feel like Sony really needs to work on their own gallery app on the Sony Xperia series. Any other phone should do the same. But overall, when it comes to the use of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, there's a lot to like about it. And I think Sony has done a good job. It just isn't there just yet where I feel confident to say it's a perfect device for me. But it is getting really close to it. And because of somewhat having that issue with the periscope, I often feel like the Xiaomi 13 Pro is the more reliable for me. It's easier to capture a shot, and therefore also I feel like moments that are in a short time, like for instance there can be that the sun is just piercing through the clouds, then the Xiaomi does it better because simply put, the auto mode is better. But if you of course want to set up your shots and everything like that, of course the Sony is gonna have a lot more freedom when it comes to that, the possibility to play around, and of course 4K 120 frames per second. The Sony does have that, the Xiaomi does not. Heck, hardly any phone has that. And with video recording, I really feel like the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V is an excellent phone. And not to mention again, you have that 3.5mm headphone jack right there on top that you could use to record proper audio. Anyway, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, in my time that I've been using it, has been a good device, and I think there's a lot to love about it. I just wish it was a little bit more reliable when it comes to the camera, and a little bit better when it comes to the periscope. And when I say a little bit, I mean quite a bit, because I do feel a little bit of a letdown when it comes to the periscope. Granted, most of the time I will use the main camera, but for the price I would have liked a little bit of a better periscope. And I'm not sure how good this technology can be in the future, because shifting lenses, we know that we have a floating lens of course with the Xiaomi 13 Pro, but when it comes to the periscope itself, I feel like there lies the weakness of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, and a little bit less reliable when it comes to, of course, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. Either way, let me know what you think about the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. I've said it a lot now. And of course, let me know if you have any specific questions about the device itself in terms of software experience, what I think about the general performance of the phone, because Through Jermaine's lens is more about the photography side of a phone and not so much the whole experience, because I feel like with most phones the experience will be quite similar. Yes, there are phones that sometimes have bugs and so on, but it's not gonna be a night and day when it comes to my own experience, especially for someone whose focus is a lot on photography. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and of course if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and so on. And of course don't forget to check out conceptscreator.com/shop. We'll leave a link in the description and pinned on the comments, where you can buy some shots that I've taken with, for instance, the Sony, the Xiaomi, but of course also what I've taken with my Panasonic Lumix S5. And of course that funding will help with purchasing, for instance, an upcoming Xiaomi 14 Pro or potentially a Vivo X100. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and of course talk to you guys in the next.